回来非中电视台，我是你的主持人 Francis。And
I'm your host, Trisha.
Alam mo, Trisha, upon entering, you will immediately settle in thanks to its relaxed, casual interiors decorated in vintage industrial.
That's right, Francis. Here, their decoration is very much interesting. Joe's Brew began with its current brewmaster, Joey Viray, who attended a beer-making course at the University of California a few years back. Back home with his siblings Marco and Mika, they slowly invested in home brewing machines, which they set up in their mother's house in Parañaque. It was 2 years ago that Joe's Brew released their Pioneer batches, brewed straight from their mother's home. Fast forward to the present, where their new brewery sits on top of their tasting room in a homey spot in Poblacion, Makati, churning out various brews in batches for delivery to their loyal commissaries. House of Joe sits directly behind Holy Smokes deep within Matilde Street in the calmer side of the neighborhood. A cozy space that sits over 10 people comfortably can also cram in around 40 on a crazy night. The tasting room attracts all types of crowds, from home brewers and expat regulars on the weeknights to yuppies and fresh grads on the weekends.
Sir Marco Viray, the owner of Joe's Brew.
So Marco, what made you decide to go for this concept?
The concept of Joe's Brew really started between me and my brother and my sister Ika. My brother learned how to make beer, and so we decided to make it into a business. The design of this tasting room and the concept, it's very steampunk, industrial vibe.
So that's your inspiration?
That's our inspiration. So if you guys are familiar with like the movie Mad Max,
I think so.
so this is like, you know, if Mad Max had a bar, this is the bar in the movie set. That's what we were thinking. So it kind of, you know, you see a lot of these things that are all custom made. Everything's made from like old mechanical parts. We have some steampunk guns. We have a plane, which is, you know, a tribute to one of our beers, which is the 34th Pursuit.
Okay.
And we love the whole copper finish. And that's why our bar is made out of copper.
Okay. So when customers come here, what is their favorite thing to order?
Okay, well, that's actually a very hard question because every person has their own preference in beer. So depende sa customer, may mga ibang tao na gusto nila is very light. So we usually recommend either a wheat beer or one of our light beers, which is a blonde ale. There are some people who like beers that are very hoppy. Hoppy meaning it's strong in taste.
Okay.
And so they end up taking the IPA, which is also known as an Indian Pale Ale. So we have that as well. So we actually offer a bunch of different varieties in terms of the styles of beer. So each person, depending on your preference, we have something that will cater for.
Do we have that here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are those?
So this one is our Fish Rider Pale Ale. So it's actually the very first beer that we made. It's basically a pale ale, which is kind of like in between a light beer and a very strong and hoppy beer. That's kind of like our bestseller and flagship beer. The rest of the beers that we have, like this one, is our Sierra Madre Wheat Ale. So wheat ale meaning we use wheat in terms of the barley. If you guys are familiar with beers like Blue Moon, Hoegaarden, that's kind of like the profile or the style of beer that we make with that. The rest of the beers that we have is, this one's a Soothsayer, which is also a pale ale but a lighter version. This one is the IPA. The 34th Pursuit IPA is actually named after an old World War II squadron here in the Philippines. It's an Indian pale ale, meaning it's a bit more hoppy or bitter, and the alcohol level is also a bit higher. Lastly, what I have here is our Meet Joe Black Sweet Stout. So it's a stout, which means it's a dark beer. So it's kind of, you know, similar to like the Guinness that you find abroad. This is the color of the Meet Joe Black, so it gives you a bit of chocolate and kind of coffee notes with it as well.
But all of them have the same alcohol level naman?
It's all different. So our lightest beer, the strongest one out of here is this one. This is 6.8%.
Okay.
But we actually have a stronger one, which is 7.2. But it's only available on tap here in the tasting room. And then the rest are pretty much at 5%. And this one is at 6%. Anywhere from 5 to 7.5%. But we can actually even make beers as high as 11 or 12%. The proper way of pouring beer really is you just make sure that you leave a little bit of space on the head. They call it the head, which is basically the foam. So that's usually the proper way of pouring beer into the glass. For craft beer, you're better off drinking the beer in a glass than in the bottle because you want the beers to kind of like, carbonate itself or get some oxygen in itself.
So aside from beer, do you also serve other food?
Here we're actually partnered with Holy Smokes, so because a tasting room, you guys can get bar chow from our next door neighbors. But aside from that, we give free peanuts and bilis because pulutan lang. Yun yung masarap kasi sa beer.
Yeah, that's true.
And when you go here, you try our beers, you guys actually get it for free, so we don't charge customers for the pulutan.
Wow.
Yun tayo pulutan.
But this is definitely a different category. It's more premium. It's done in kind of like an artisanal way. Therefore, making our beers a bit more expensive. So it's kind of hard getting into restaurants and bars. So our business is primarily selling to establishments. Once people tried it out, people normally switch over and transition over to craft beer, and they get a better understanding.
But right now, we're here in the actual brewery.
So would you please show us how a beer is crafted?
So basically, what we have here is our brew house. So what you see here is our mash tun, our boil kettle, and our hot liquor tank. What they do is we basically cook the beers through these three tanks. What happens is once we get the barley that's cracked open, you put it here in the mash tun. We have our boiling water coming from our hot liquor tank. We put the boiling water over there, and that's where we extract the sugar from the starch. We then transfer that to the boil kettle. So in this process, dyan natin lulutuin yung beer. So bulubuluin siya, lulutuin beer. That takes about an hour. So what we have here are the ingredients that I was explaining earlier. This is basically what we call our base malt. So for the most part, we use a lot of these because this is where we basically get the starches and the sugar. So the specialty malts naman, ito yung nagbibigay ng kulay at ng body din sa beer. After this, basically, so you use the mash tun and then we're cooking the beer in the boil kettle.
Okay.
That's where we add naman the hops. So these are in pellet form na, but this is actually it's like a plant. That gives the bitterness and also the flavors and the aroma come from the hops. So there's also a lot of different strains of hops.
So where does the alcohol come in?
It's a good question. All right, so when we're done cooking the beer, what we do is this actually gets transferred to the fermenting tanks. So these 4 tanks here that you see, they're all called fermenting tanks. Basically, when you're done cooking, it goes through a heat exchange. From hot, it will basically make the beers really cold, and then we put it in here. This is called the fermenting process. Fermenting process, this is where we pitch in the yeast. So you're asking where we get the alcohol. The yeast then eats the sugar and then it turns it into alcohol. So it depends how long we ferment it. Beers can stay here for as long as 3 weeks to almost a month or even sometimes more, depending on the style of the beer. So the whole process of beer making is actually, it only takes you a few hours or an hour or so to cook it. Pero the longest part is when you ferment it. So it's kind of like where we age it. So it was a wine, we age the wine.
Yes.
Barrels here, we ferment it. When it's done, the beer is it's already finished, and so we put it in kegs or in bottles, and it's ready to be served.
Do you happen to know how many bottles of beer each can produce?
Yeah, so this is a 800-liter tank.
Oh my god.
Wow,
So it gives
that's a
you
lot.
100 cases, more or less, so about 2,400 bottles.
Thank you so much, Marco, for showing us around.
Thanks for coming.
It's nice to know how alcohol isn't just bad for you, like hindi lang panglasing, pero it also has the health benefits, pero syempre in moderation. Francis, I've learned so much today because in school we learn a lot about this, but it's so nice to actually see it right in front of my eyes. Parang siyang field trip. Yeah, and I really had so much fun learning about the different beers and how it's created. And of course, meeting the owner of Joe's Brew here in Poblacion.
It's actually exciting. Actually, excited ako i-try eh.
Mamaya.